I knew that I had to put myself in front of the camera, use the city as backdrop, and I would just be out in the world. And I was consistent every single day. If you believe in something that you've created or a service that you provide, stay consistent, block out that noise.
At 26 years old, you were recruited by the CEO of Calvin Klein. How did you land that gig?
If you can allure and create this emotion and a mood and really pull people into wanting to be a part of that world, then you've got it. You know what really helped me have the attitude for it?
Welcome back to 30 Years in 30 Minutes. I'm your host, Michael Oved, and we've got a great episode for you today. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you today's guest. Gayle Perry is a personal stylist, interior designer, and arbiter of all things style. She's the force behind the large and ever-growing platform Gayle Style, which boasts around 500,000 followers. She's also the creator of Gayle Tuck, Gayle Tie, and Gayle Roll, style tips that help women and men look their best, feel their most confident, and be their most productive selves. Gayle is known around the world for her innate sense of style, her keen eye for statement pieces, her creativity in high-low dress, and her ability to heal and empower through style, no matter the body type, budget, or age. Gayle, it is such an honor, such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here.
So before we go into your tremendous accomplishments, tell us more about you. A bit more about your upbringing, your journey to eventually becoming one of the most influential personal stylists on social media.
I came from a very large family. There are 7 children. I'm the oldest of 6 and was a real mommy at quite a young age and in a divorced home. And that really will help you gain your momentum and strength in many ways. And I was also bullied and that began in 6th grade. And I just remember there just being a lot of kind of tough stuff, whether it was at home or at school. And there was something that got me through those tough days. And I would watch my mother when she got dressed. And my mother was 2 things. She was a nurse and also a model, which is an interesting combination because she would help heal people. And then she would also put on these dreamy outfits. And I remember on some of those very tough days that I would find myself in her closet trying on some of those pieces and feeling different. And they didn't have to be expensive pieces, the ones that I wore, but if it was my favorite brown corduroy or a great t-shirt, when I felt that I looked good, I felt good, and I felt capable. It was kind of like Wonder Woman and putting on a cape. So I felt I could get through anything, the tough stuff as a child of divorce, being bullied in school. And that's at the core of the young Gayle.
So you were super interested in fashion from when you were younger. How did that translate to, how did you further develop those interests while you were in high school, while you were in college?
I realize now I had so much creativity in me. And it's interesting because my career in fashion began on the business side. We'll get to that in a moment. But when I look back now, I just remember that creativity got me through a lot, whether it was dreaming up outfits the night before or even, in the morning and standing in front of my closet, or the way that I would put my room together. A certain bookshelf had to look a certain way and everything had its place and the items had to be quite special. Again, not expensive, but meaningful and they looked good. So that was something that just was in me. And I found through that process, whether it was putting my room together in a certain way or dressing myself, that again, it empowered me and it fueled me. And it also was really exciting.
I mean, so that empowerment, and I totally understand that fueled you. And that truly is how a lot of people become successful. There's this interest of theirs that arises out of perhaps necessity.
Yes.
And they just run with that. And so I guess for you, how did running with that look like in your early days?
Well, I was running away from the bullies or doing anything I had to do to, stand up to them. So it really was necessity. And I'm so glad you said that because I had to get through. I had to, get through tough stuff as a child of divorce. And I had to really get through going to school when I was walking into a classroom and there were literally girls in the doorway who were ready to kick me on my way in. So I didn't have a choice and I had to find tools, and dressing well was one of those tools that really gave me that armor. And it wasn't so much armor where it was like, okay, I'm going to fight back. It was more preparedness. And because I always came from a place, I didn't want to be bullish like them. I just wanted to be more, I in fact used to pray for them and hope that overnight, maybe God would do something in their sleep and just help them be kinder the next day.
So how do you deal with bullies? Because there's a lot of people who encounter bullies in their life. There must be a balance that you strike when it comes to bullies. Obviously you have to fight back, or maybe you don't have to fight back. So you don't look helpless, or so you don't allow yourself to be stepped on. I mean, what is that balance? How did you approach that? And looking back, how could you have approached it in a better way?
It's so important that we have to strengthen ourselves. And I learned that as a young girl. I said, what do I need to do to give myself the strength and the muscle to get through? Because you have to show that you're strong and that you're not going to take it. But at the same time, you're not going to go to their level and their place of being a bully back. So I definitely stood up and said, hey, cut it out, And I also found that I created other pockets where I could go. At one point, it was theater. At one point, I was not meant for the stage, but I was a stage manager. So it's just in any way to be a part of the theater. And it's just so important to, I have younger kids and I tell them, you give yourself the strength that you need, and then you go other avenues and you find your people. And I just only needed one person. And I found that person in the theater program in high school.
That's wonderful. And it's so interesting to me that you mentioned theater and performances as your outlet, because for me, I know I'm a classically trained pianist and guitarist. And whenever I was dealing with something, I always used to default to, let me play the piano, let me play the guitar. And so I think it's so wonderful to hear you say that. Moving on to your college years. So in high school, you developed your interest in fashion. You kind of saw it as an outlet that you can go to. And then in college, how did you approach fashion in college?
It was so exciting for me because I had the opportunity to move away from a place where, and I mean, I have the most amazing family and so much love, but any divorced family is hard. And I knew that once I got away, and also being so responsible for younger siblings, that it was my time. And I also, because I was going through so much in junior and high school, I couldn't apply myself so much academically. And I'll tell you, back in the day with the Barron's book, when you were looking at what schools you could get into, the section that I could go to was less competitive. I couldn't even go to competitive. And I didn't let that hinder me from knowing that I could do good things in life. And so I saw it as an opportunity. Let me get away. Let me really focus on me and focus on my interests. And I didn't really know at the time initially in college that fashion was going to be my career. I knew that no matter what, I was always going to present myself in a way that was meaningful and thoughtful, because I knew that through that, when you make that impression on others, it does build confidence. And I always did that. I was the girl that even during final exams showered and got dressed. I didn't roll out in my sweatpants because I knew if I was dressed and showered that I would do better. But, again, the fashion stuff came a little later.
I think it's super interesting that you spoke about you not being able to apply yourself academically. And then when it came time to apply to colleges, you weren't ready for that. A lot of our viewers, I think most of our viewers, are people who are still in school, who are getting ready for their lives, really excited about their lives. And a lot of people, the majority of people, aren't able to attend those prestigious institutions. From someone like yourself who's accomplished so much, yet, as you said, you had trouble performing academically. Is it still possible to be successful if you're not academically successful? And how can you offset your academics in the real world?
So I mentor a lot of young people, and I love sharing my story. And that's why I was really honored and thrilled to talk with you today, because I really have a story, and I could have easily been demotivated when I knew I couldn't go where friends were going to, higher institutions and more competitive. But I said to myself, I have an opportunity here. I'm going to get the best education that I can and work really hard. And I know that that is going to give me opportunities that I may not have at this moment. I love telling my story because I had so many obstacles and I worked really hard in college. I transferred, I did better at the next school, and I've really had an incredible and meaningful career that I'm so grateful for.
And I think as we go through your career, I think the key that'll emerge, that the string that'll come out is resilience. And I think even looking at your schooling and going back to my question, when you don't have the academics to succeed, is it really just a function of hard work? You got to get down and you got to get dirty. You have to just be willing to work harder than anyone else. Is that really what success is a function of, independent of academics?
Believing in yourself, doing everything you can to convince yourself, but also show people. I had a professor who said, an A here is going to be a C where you're going. And I said, watch me. Like, you just have, yes, the hard work is really, really important, and not taking no for an answer. There's always a way. And it's also like, I would say to myself, just watch me, watch what happens. And to, give myself the inner pep talks that I needed to make sure that I stayed that course, be consistent and work really hard. But believing in yourself is so critical, and not taking no for an answer. It begins at no.
I even told you this last time we spoke. A quote that I live by is attitude is altitude. Your attitude will determine how high you go.
Absolutely.
I'm sure for you, when you were breaking into the fashion world, it's not easy to break into the fashion world. Probably was in large part a function of your attitude, which I actually think is the hardest part about success, is having the right attitude. So can you tell us a little bit about how you broke into the fashion world, a little bit about the attitude that you had to have when you were going into it?
What really helped me have the attitude for it was dressing the part and assuming the role before I was there. And I speak about this. Colleges, universities, corporations, banks, law firms assume the role. That really helped me believe that I could do it. And the reason that I started a business that is accessible, no matter body type, budget, or age, is because you can do it. You don't need to have a certain income level or a certain body type. Style is accessible. So I assumed the role before I had it. And when you show up in that way, it does foster confidence, and people have more confidence in you. They give you a chance.
So tell us a little bit about the first chances that you had as a result of your confidence. You started your career off at Donna. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how you got that gig, how you went about, performing there?
When I graduated with an English major, and I tell everyone, don't be afraid of an English or liberal arts, because it's really good, to be able to communicate and write has really served me. I graduated with an English major an English degree rather, and I was working at a legal publishing house, which was interesting. I was reporting on food labeling law that was not right and companies that were misleading the public. Our division folded, lost funding. I'm 23. I'm living in a walk-up with a roommate. My rent is due. What am I going to do? I go to the New York Times when we still went to the newspaper, and help wanted, or rather headhunter ad for advertising. And I called him and he said, I'm sorry, I don't speak with English majors. I said, speak with me. I want advertising. And he said, okay, Thursday at 2:00. And I was in his office and I showed up and I said, look, I will do whatever I need to do. I need to work in advertising. And I started working for Donnie Deutsch, and it was amazing in new business. And I was very fortunate because my aunt was working at the New York Times, knew that Donna Karen needed an associate media director, called me. I'm literally in the closet. Sorry, Donnie, but I was like hiding at Deutsch Advertising. And I'm like, yes, I will be there. And so it started for me at 23. And I just absorbed everything I could, whether I was at Deutsch Advertising. I didn't care if I was researching bath products to pitch the Body Shop in new business, or pick up dry cleaning, or order pizza for a meeting at midnight. I was so happy to be in the room. I read the faxes that I sent. I just wanted to learn. It was exciting to me. It was exciting to know that, look, I can someday be in the role of the head of this company. And I always saw that for myself. So I was in all those rooms with some of the best creative minds, and I know that helped me build my business.
I think something you said that I think is super important is just the importance of being in the room. When you're in the room, you're exposed to so much, you're exposed to so much knowledge. You are there where the decisions are being made. And so I think for you, And just hearing about that, and as someone myself who's looking about what I'm going to do next in my life, I think it's just so empowering to hear the importance of being in the room.
I tell a lot of young people today, they say, I just want to go out there now and either be a stylist or have my own company. And I said, you know what, if you have an opportunity to be, one woman said, I just don't really want to be at Ralph Lauren looking at fabrics. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're at Ralph Lauren looking at fabrics. Even if you don't want to be in that division, get there, go do that.
And so in your early days at Donna Karan, and for those viewers who don't know, Donna Karan is a very successful stylist and the founder of DKNY. What were the important lessons that you learned that you used later on in your life, that you applied later on in your life about how she runs the business, what she does in her day-to-day life? What are her habits? What are her routines?
Certainly the way that she cared for women and approached how to empower them through style. I mean, that is something that, I use all the time, really understanding what works best on a woman and a man, because I dress men too. And even more than that, how to, like I said before, communicate your message and build a brand and put content out there that has to be three things. It has to allure. It has to be relevant for who you're serving it to, and it has to provide a service. And I learned that there has to be a reason. Donna's philosophy very much was, especially with in-store events, make it a destination, a reason why people come to you. And that's what I do on my Instagram. I want to provide a service and make it a place, a destination with great relevancy and really to help people.
Yeah, and I just want to, go into a bit more details about how to allure, how to be irrelevant, and how to provide a service. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Sure. For instance, so I knew being around some of the most creative minds who were developing the ad campaigns that I had to put myself in front of the camera, use the city as backdrop. Bill Cunningham or Scott Schumann, the street style to me was the most inspiring. And I would dream up these outfits and I would get out on the street. And the New York City as backdrop is the grittiest, coolest, most beautiful and spirited backdrop you could have, in my opinion. And I would just be out in the world, and I was consistent every single day, no matter the weather. And I just showed, here's what I was wearing. And the inspiration for that came from a colleague who said, I stand in front of my closet trying to remember what you wore. And I allured by going out there, no matter the weather, and having a photo or a video taken.
For people who want to start their own fashion label, and you've gotten to know Donna Karan very well. And so for people who want to be like that and want to start off their fashion label, there's a lot of steps you have to do. So just starting off, what would you say is the most important thing to do?
Get as much experience as possible. And, certainly a fashion school is incredible. But even if you can't do that, an internship with a designer and just be in that room and gather as much as you can. And also, start creating things for yourself and for friends.
When you're getting that experience, what questions should you ask? What should you strive to learn? Because I think it's very easy to say, okay, I'm going to get an internship by a personal stylist, or I'm going to get an internship at Ralph Lauren. What is the most important thing to look for when you're at those places and you have aspirations to go into fashion? What should you be looking for and focused on?
One thing I would really encourage is to ask questions. I remember when there were interns or people just starting out, and I loved when they asked how I got there, because I went from Donna Karan and then to Condé Nast, so a number of magazines, and helpbuildstyle.com. So I've been doing a lot of very entrepreneurial things and just around some amazing people. And I always had young people asking me, how did you do this, Gail? So ask those questions. It's so exciting for people who've kind of made it, if you will, because we'd had people help us, so ask the questions and don't be afraid of like that grunt work and all the processes along the way, because it may be annoying in the beginning, but knowing that you took care of every step in those initial phases and those jobs that really don't feel all that exciting, trust me, like later on having that experience, because it also will help you when you're out in the world. And you can say, I started here, I did this, I was in those rooms when, where the X, Y, and Z happened, and now I'm doing it on my own. That's a big deal. That's resume building. And again, even if it's not the one area within the company that you want to be yet, that's okay. Remember that word yet.
So taking a step back, you started at Donna Karan at 23. And then at 26 years old, you were recruited by the CEO of Calvin Klein to run their entire media department and to manage a tremendous amount, I think their entire US advertising budget for all divisions of Calvin Klein. How did you land? That's a very impressive gig to land at 26 years old. How did you land that gig?
It was so exciting. The industry, it was really a lot of young people that were in these roles. And I made a reputation for myself. My job was to buy the advertising in magazines back at a time when magazines were king and queen. It's like that. If you were in a Vogue and if you were advertising that there, that's where everyone got their influence. And so I became very close with the publishers, and I had those relationships, and I had the reputation of being a really strong negotiator. And I remember some of my bosses saying, "Don't be fooled by Gail. She may show up looking the way she does and beautiful and kind and all those things, but beware, because she is strong and she is a fierce negotiator." And so the CEO of Calvin Klein saw that I was able to get the prime real estate in the magazines for Donna. And that's what they do. They try to then take, and I was really incredible. It was hard work, really, really hard. There were tears. These companies are tough to work at, with all due respect, because hard work, that's what it is. The tough stuff brings the glory. And so it was almost like business school for me. So it was really amazing. And from there, as I left there to help launch a technology company to make magazines interactive and go the digital route. So I was always kind of like, what? Of course, I'll roll up my sleeve and try it.
And so at Calvin Klein, you got the role partially because of your negotiating skills. What would you say is the most important thing when you're negotiating, and how do you develop those skills?
Listen, just stop talking and listen. It's so important. When you are presenting something, whether it's an idea on paper or you're talking about it, you need to hear the thought process of the person you're presenting it to, and you need to hear the objections, because so often we're so concerned about, firing off the benefits, and this is why, and I understand your business. Just hear, because then take a pause and address either the concerns, the obstacles, what they consider benefits, and showing that, that you're really there to listen for them makes a big difference, rather.
We had the founder of SparkNotes on a couple months back, and he actually said something very similar. He said, when you're negotiating, it's important to be the last person to speak in the room. Would you agree with that?
I would, because first you want to hear what someone likes about either your product, your service, what the challenges are, and they need to be heard. And then you can craft, because you are so in charge of your own business. You know how to work around those obstacles because you have the solution. So be really solution minded, and who doesn't love a solution minded person? And I remember when I was in sales and even negotiating on the side of buying, that, it was really important to be solution oriented, consultative in either your sell or your buy, and collaborative.
So having been exposed to so many ads and having been so instrumental in analyzing those ads while you were at Calvin Klein, what makes a good ad?
Again, if you can allure and create this emotion and a mood and really pull people into wanting to be a part of that world, or to feel that emotion, or to look that way, then you've got it. And that's what I really tried to do in building my business and how I put myself out there. I took it down a notch, though, in the sense of wanting to be more accessible. I think when you're looking at a fashion ad, whether it's Donna Karan or Calvin Klein or even a Vogue magazine, it's very aspirational. And I wanted to be sure that I struck that balance between being aspirational and someone that people could look up to, but also be accessible, so that, a friend in your life.
And so after you left Calvin Klein from 2006 to 2011, you helped to build style.com, and then you launched Du Jour, you revitalized and you elevated the Village Voice, and then you grew Gallery Magazine. I mean, the first thing is, how did you get those gigs? How did you Where did that entrepreneurial spirit to get involved in all of those initiatives, how did that come about?
What I said before when I encourage young people just to take that great job, even if it's not exactly where they want to be yet, I made sure that in all my jobs, in all my positions, to really get to know who as many people as I could and to leave them feeling better after having met me. Whether in the early days it was, sure, I'll get you a coffee or I'll fax that for you, to, the days when I was in charge of just making someone feel better having met with me. And I think that is really, really important.
So what goes into building a magazine?
Once you build a reputation for yourself and people know that you're the one that could help them build their business or, take it to another level, then that's what happens. And there's so much that goes into it, whether it's the editorial side and creating the amazing content. And I was lucky that I got to really spend time with the editorial side, which I loved as an English major. And that's what really inspired me to go from buying advertising for Donna, Karen, and Calvin Klein to selling it, because the notion of showing up in a meeting and explaining why the content made most sense and was most relevant for a designer or a brand was so exciting to me. And, and having that conviction as to why there was brand synergy. So that was something that was always really important to me. And that was on the editorial side, and the business side, coming with the right ideas that were going to help scale business and help further build their brand identities. I was very instrumental in helping print-minded CEOs of fashion houses understand that soon enough, and this was back in 99, 2000, people would buy clothing online. And I can't tell you how many CEOs said to me, Gail, I have no idea what you're talking about. I trust you. Here's my money. If you can come from a place of being educated and consultative and really understand your business, people will want to go there. So it was very exciting to really have a sense of both sides. And that's what I became known for. And so I encourage young people, become known for things, work really hard and you will become known for things, and you'll be the one that is thought of when there is a position to fill, because you are so valued and you are needed and you will make an impact.
I think that lesson and those lessons that you learned along the way, you inevitably took in the fall of 2016 when you launched your own style blog, which on Instagram is @GailStyle, and that has close to 500,000 followers. Why did you create that account?
I was working at the Village Voice and a colleague said, Gail, I stand in front of my closet every night and I try to remember what you wore that day because I want to copy it. And I love that. I always knew that I inspired people. And, they would ask where I bought something or what they should wear. And my best friend said to me, Gail, listen to the universe. Everywhere you go, you're being asked these questions. And you have worked so hard for all these other companies. Do it for yourself now. Build your own. Now, I was newly divorced. That was about 9 years ago, with a 4 and a 7-year-old. But I wanted more flexibility in my schedule. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to work really hard and I'm going to try this. And I remember how scary it was, and literally like picking up my wobbly knee, one in front of the other, and just keep going. So it was very, very exciting. It was scary, but with that fear comes excitement too.
And so what were the initial challenges you had that made your feet wobbly? And what were those challenges that you had while you were building your social media presence up?
There were naysayers. I created the Gayle Tuck, and even to me, it sounded so weird. I was like, the Gayle Tuck, like, I don't know, but I believed in the magic of it. I believe that no matter your body type, if you taper and you tuck, you provide a lengthened, more polished and slimming appearance. And that was something. And in time, so I would say it and say it. And I knew there were naysayers. And there were even some friends who were kind of nasty in their comments, me putting myself out there, saying it was a bit narcissistic. And listen, I learned from, all the places that I've worked that if you want to build something and you have to, oftentimes you do have to put yourself out there. And I'm so glad I did, because now I'll be in an airport And I'll have entire families run up to me and say, not just the woman who's wearing the Gayle tuck, but down to the children. We're all doing the Gayle tuck, or we're all doing the Gayle, tie. And so I stayed really consistent. Naysayers are hard. They are, because they make you question. They really do. They get at the core. It's hard. But you, like I said before, if you believe in something that you've created or a service that you provide, stay consistent, block out that noise and say to yourself, just watch. And that's what happens. And some of those people that were quite unkind in the beginning have really said, wow, the Gayle effect is big. And now I get the Gayle tuck and all the things.
What is the key, though, to blocking out those naysayers? Because I think it sounds really great, but it's so difficult to actually practice because you're in the moment and you've experienced this and endured this. And that's why I keep saying that the string that ties everything you've done together is resilience, because no matter what it is that you did, whether it was in high school with the bullies or whether it was later on in your career when you had to tell your boss, you said, let me show you, right?
Yeah.
And then here when you had to experience and endure those naysayers. So what is the key to dealing with the naysayers?
It's what you said early on. It's necessity. I didn't have a choice. I always saw a better way. I always saw doing greater things. And I was like, you know what? I left these companies. I committed to doing this. I have to do this. I don't have a choice. I have to try this. I have to stay consistent. It is hard, and I'll be the first to say it, but it is essential. And there are tools to do it.
What are those tools?
So the tools are yoga, meditation, journaling. So if you're feeling like, okay, someone's telling me that they're never going to buy my belt or my bag or use my service or hire me for this, write down all the reasons why. Why would you? Why would you hire yourself? Why do you see that item in your life enhancing your life? I think that's really powerful. And also bring a tribe around you, a sister, a best friend, and keep going to them and sharing, and they'll lift you up. It's like, if you have your tribe and most importantly, you are your tribe. So, give yourself the tools, put the oxygen mask on yourself so that you can stay focused in your business, because what comes from that is so much glory personally.
Yeah. And by the way, about the oxygen mask, I think it's such an amazing metaphor to talk about the airplane. And the fact that airplane always says, if the plane is going down, you put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on anyone else around you. Because if you don't help yourself, you can't help anyone else. And so I really like that you said that about the airplane, because I'm sure that's exactly what you were thinking.
When I was younger, I really didn't understand that term. I'm like, wait a minute. If my mother sees me not being able to breathe, why is she not putting it on me immediately? And it's like what I encourage women now. And I help a lot of women and a lot of men around the world be their best selves, better help others. They can't do that until they put the oxygen mask on themselves first.
And so moving to your content creation, just really quick question. What is the key? And you have a lot of engagement, which I think is wonderful, but what is the key to boosting engagement?
Again, being accessible to people, feeling like they can. I remember some women in the beginning would say, well, who is ever going to follow your tips if they don't look like you? And I make sure that I come from a place of always wanting to give. And that really helps. And also the other thing, so wanting to give, but also sharing my struggles, sharing my hardships, sharing my pain. Because if I can talk about the tough stuff that I have been through, it normalizes it for other people. So all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, she just opened up about that. Oh my God, I didn't know she was divorced. I didn't know she was bullied for all those years. I didn't know X, Y, and Z. And I will be writing a book because there's more letters in that equation to share. And I do it because I think it really will help others.
Accessibility, but to be accessible consistently, and don't give up when you're getting 100 views, because if you're accessible, if you put out the right content that is hitting the right niche, whatever niche it is you're in.
I'm glad you said that, because there have been times when I've said, oh my God, that reel hardly did anything, or, oh, I guess maybe they didn't like how I wore that. But honestly, just keep going. It's like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, not everyone is going to love what I do in any given time, but just stay consistent. There's a reason people are following along, and they've, continue to give them what they've come for.
In addition to your Instagram account, you also have a personal styling brand. You spoke a little bit about what goes into styling people, but what does go into styling people?
Less in your closet, more of the right things, getting more mileage out of your items, clearing out the noise, the items that might represent a time in your life that was sad. Either, oh, I don't fit in that anymore, or I went through divorce. There's no reason to have those items that make you feel bad. Clear them out, have less, know that every item in there is great because then they'll all work together, mixing and matching.
If you're looking at what I'm wearing now and I asked you, hey, can you style, like, what would you say about my outfit?
I mean, I would say there really isn't a need here, but no, you've definitely nailed it.
Oh, I appreciate it. And so moving on a little bit to you, and I know we spoke a lot about the advice that you have, but can you tell us a little bit more about you, about the Gayle Perry behind the screen?
The Gayle Perry behind the screen is so in love with being a mom. I couldn't wait to be a mom. And again, it's probably because I'm the oldest of 6. It's the hardest job in the world. It's the most rewarding. It is such a privilege. I just get so much joy out of it. So that is amazing. I love to read. Being a literature major, I love to read. I love film and theater. I love to travel. I spent a year and a half at one point. I had the courage to leave GQ magazine because I had an opportunity to live and travel abroad for a year and a half. And so I love being out in the world and cultures and finding inspiration from elsewhere and time with family and friends. And I'm just grateful that I have the opportunity to have built a business to allow myself to be the best mother I can, to give them a life that is meaningful.
Is there something that your followers don't know about you?
Here's one thing for young people. When I had that interview at Calvin Klein, I was stressed out. I didn't own anything Calvin Klein. I called a dear friend. I wore her Calvin Klein coat, didn't take it off for the entire interview. And that morning, I danced in my kitchen to Macy Gray at full blast to take the nerves and the pressure off. And that really helped.
You need to hype yourself up sometimes. You're the only person who will hype yourself up. And so what's next for you there? I mean, you've accomplished so much and you wear 15 billion different hats and I have no clue how on earth you do it. But what is next for you? Is there something you're looking forward to? I know you spoke about a book, but like what is next? What is the next chapter for you?
In 2019, I added interior design to my portfolio of services, and I've really taken my interior design business to another level. I started in the beginning doing full scale properties, but now I'm doing a lot of bit larger properties, custom, really incredible work. And so doing more with interior design and even peppering that into my platform because it's really a Gayle style lifestylist approach. And all under the umbrella of that. A TED Talk is like my dream. If anyone is listening,
TED Talk.
I have a TED Talk that is just like bubbling over.
Yeah.
And so those are a book for sure.
I think it's just so important to get your message across because look, I'm speaking as a 21-year-old. I'm speaking as a Harvard student. Your message is so powerful. And just to hear from you about no matter what failures you've endured, no matter what obstacles you've come across, you came out more successful than you were before. You were true to yourself. You were true to what you believed in. You actually got much stronger in what you believe in, and you just kept on going. And I think that's a perfect segue into this question that we ask every single guest that we have. And after this, we'll get to the rapid fire questions. You know, based on all of your experience, all your successes, your many successes and your failures, you are speaking to people who want to be like you. What would you tell the next generation about how to best prepare them to succeed?
Be open-minded, be hardworking, be optimistic. People want optimistic people around and be grateful. I always was. I took none of it for granted. When someone's applying to work with me, as an intern or something, when they come across with real positive energy, and also when they do their homework. So if someone is going to present why they want to work with me or work in my field, I want to know that they did a nice deep dive and really understand it. And that's just great preparedness for anything that we do in life. And just to stay committed. And listen, there are so many people who have been through tough stuff. It is not easy for students today. It was not easy for me. And Michael, I really appreciate the chance to lend my voice and my experiences and the hard stuff to your audience and to young people, because there is such a need right now. And I have such a soft spot. I always say that, like, if I'm not giving, I'm not living. And it came from necessity. It saved my life to help others. So I really appreciate the opportunity to do it.
Of course. So on to the rapid fire questions. What book do you recommend?
Tipping Point.
Okay. What has been the key to your success?
Hard work, grit, don't give up.
What is your biggest regret?
Not starting sooner, my own business.
What is a quote that you live by?
If I'm not giving, I'm not living.
You spoke a little bit about your interior design business. What is your favorite home style?
Modern, but comfortable, like transitional, feelings, not too modern, and lots of textures and visual interest and beautiful color palettes. Very similar to the way that I dress. And a mix, and it's really important, masculine, feminine.
Who is your inspiration?
Kelly Worsler, because her approach to style, whether it's for how she dresses or her homes and the spaces that she designs.
And what is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Breathe. It just sounds so, but it's like I find when I was younger and even now when I just take those moments and just breathe and it just helps you to reset. The tough stuff, the pain doesn't define us. It can fuel us. And it could be like that launch pad, when you turn it into purpose. There's so much glory that comes out of it. I know it sounds easier than it is. It's really hard, but it can be done. And I've had so many obstacles in my way, and I'm sure there are more to come. That's life.
That is so powerful. That is so awesome. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you and having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gail.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to 30 Years in 30 Minutes. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments if there's anyone else you want to hear from.